Elara was born to heal, but tonight, her gift becomes her curse. Before a jeering crowd, she is auctioned off as payment for her family's debt, not to a man, but to the infamous Alpha of Blackthorn, cursed to silence and never seen in daylight. If Elara cannot break his curse, she will be his captive forever, but the price of freedom may demand more than her soul, and the secret she carries could doom them both. What happens when the only cure is a bond forbidden by fate? But let me start from the beginning. Elara stood on the stone block, wrists bound, as men bid for her freedom. The iron collar bit into her skin, colder even than the wind swirling through Blackthorn's rain-soaked square. Someone in the crowd spat at her bare feet, but the chain tethering her ankles was polished silver, not rusted iron. Why waste silver on a healer? Why make her shimmer under torchlight as if she were rare? The auctioneer's gavel crashed against the block beside her, cracked oak echoing over jeers. Each shout from the crowd mingled with the rattle of coins. Hunger sharpened to cruelty. Elara pressed trembling hands to her chest as the man's voice rose again.
Lot 37, Elara, registered healer, full blood, untouched, Blackthorn clan.
She flinched as Sir Bram paraded her lineage. Her secret burned beneath the torn wool of her dress, the crescent moon birthmark high on her collarbone. Her gaze darted over faces, desperate townsfolk, sneering merchants, rough-handed men with wolfish grins. None met her eyes. A howl cut through the jeering. The crowd parted in a rush, as if a sickness passed among them. Torches guttered. Fur brushed Elara's ankle. A pale wolfhound, massive and silent, stared up at her with silver eyes. Rook, her only friend in the world, and even he could not reach her now. Behind Rook, a man strode into the circle, taller than any guard, shoulders broad beneath a black leather cloak, storm-gray eyes fixed on the block. His jaw was slashed through with an old star, hair wild and dark as the river at midnight. He wore no crown, but every head bowed as he passed. No one said his name. They didn't have to. The Alpha. The bidding faltered, then collapsed into silence. Elara's skin prickled. She had heard stories that the Alpha could tear a man's throat out with one hand, that he was cursed never to speak, that his own pack feared his shadow more than the king's justice. But why come here, where healers were just another debt to be bought? The Alpha said nothing. He raised a gloved hand, pointing at Elara, not at her face, but at the silver chain binding her wrist. The gesture was sharp, final. The crowd recoiled as if struck. Sir Bram's jaw clenched, his limp more pronounced as he glanced at the Alpha, then at Elara, then back to the coins, quivering in his palm.
All bids withdrawn. Sold to the Alpha of Blackthorn.
A fist twisted in Elara's gut. Sold. Not chosen, not claimed by kin, but sold like a trinket no one wanted to touch. She looked for Rook, but the wolfhound was held back by two guards, his growl low and useless. The Alpha's boots rang against the stone as he approached. Up close, he smelled of rain and cedar smoke. Unfamiliar, sharp, alive. He paused in front of her, eyes unreadable. Not a word, not even a hint of mercy. A guard unlocked her ankle chain and yanked her forward. Elara stumbled, nearly falling, the silver biting deeper into her skin. The Alpha didn't flinch, didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but did nothing. Her fear, sharp and metallic, burst into anger for one wild heartbeat.
I'm worth more than your silence.
The guard's grip tightened, but the Alpha's gaze flickered to her mouth, then her eyes. For a moment, she thought he would speak. He only turned away, cloak swirling, leading her toward a waiting carriage, black as pitch. The hush that followed pressed against her ears. Not awe, fear. Why did he want her? Why did the most powerful shifter in Blackthorn need a healer bound by chains? Elara's feet dragged on wet cobbles as the guards forced her forward. Rook barked once, frantic and lost behind her. The carriage door opened. The darkness inside felt colder than the night, more final than any cell. As the carriage door slammed, Elara caught the Alpha's shadow moving, not toward her, but to the far end of the seat, as if even her presence was something he feared to touch. Only the sound of chains settling in her lap told her she was still real, sold to the silent Alpha for a purpose she could neither guess nor name. The carriage jolted into motion, rain drumming overhead. Elara's hands curled around the chain, her mind racing with questions she dared not speak. Not yet. Behind her, the wolfhound's howl chased them down the winding road, and the darkness ahead pressed close, waiting. Elara's wrist burned where the iron cuff bit her skin. Each jolt of the carriage scraped new pain. Rain clawed at the roof, sharp as needles. Why was she the only one in chains? Why did her skin prickle where the metal touched? Cold, almost alive. Opposite her, Alpha Kale's silhouette loomed, motionless, but for the flecks of leather-gloved fingers. He hadn't spoken since the auction. Why did his silence feel heavier than a blow? The guards outside flinched at every movement from him. Even Sir Bram, stiff-backed and cane-bound at her side, kept his stare fixed on the window. Lightning cracked open the dark. For a split second, Elara glimpsed the ruins of Blackthorn Keep, clinging to the cliff like a carcass. In that flash, Kale's hand spasmed. He recoiled, just for a breath, before his jaw set hard as stone. She didn't know why he looked so haunted. Was he hiding something? Or was it just the storm? The carriage lurched to a stop. Sir Bram's grip found her elbow.
Don't test him, girl. He's lost more than you know.
Elara jerked away, refusing to be dragged. She stepped out herself, letting cold wind slap her cheeks. Her chin lifted. Defiance, small but real. Mud sucked at her boots. The air reeked of wet fur and old sage. The Alpha's cloak whispered past, black leather shining with rain, as he led the way into the torchlit arch. From the shadows, a giant wolfhound emerged, pale gray, eyes bright as steel. Rook. He padded straight to Elara, nose pressed firmly to her palm. His breath was warm, his fur unexpectedly soft against her cold fingers.
If you're here to kill me, at least pretend I taste expensive.
Rook's tail thumped, and for an absurd heartbeat, Elara wanted to laugh. Sir Bram nudged her forward with his cane as the guard unlocked the heavy doors. Inside, the keep closed around her, the smell of damp wool, candle wax, and something sharp beneath, like singed herbs. Elara watched the guards' faces. None would meet her eyes. She kept count of exits, arches, barred doors, a habit from years spent repairing more than wounds. Stairways spiraled down, stone slick underfoot. Sir Bram's limp echoed softly.
Do you lock up all your guests, or is today special?
He paused at the dungeon threshold, eyes shadowed.
We don't take chances anymore.
A cell door yawned open, ancient, lined with silver threads. Elara ducked inside, heart pounding, but she fixed Sir Bram with an icy stare.
You're afraid of what I'll see, not what I'll do.
He didn't answer. The lock clanged shut, a final, echoing verdict. Alpha Kyle filled the doorway, half covered in stormlight. He pulled a slip of parchment from his cloak, scribbled with quick, angular strokes, and pushed it between the bars. Elara snatched it before anyone could stop her. The note read, "Heal, obey." She looked up at Kale, met those storm-gray eyes, saw a hint of something raw flicker and vanish. But then he hesitated. A flicker of doubt? Or was he testing her? Wordlessly, she tore the parchment in two and dropped it at his feet. Her voice cut through the chill.
You want a healer? Unlock me, or bleed instead.
A muscle jumped along Kale's jaw. He didn't move. Lightning flared again, and this time, he flinched back from the cell. eyes squeezed shut for half a second, as if the thunder could break him too. The Alpha turned, boots muffled on ancient stone, vanishing into the corridor. Sir Bram's keys rattled, then silence, thick as oil, swallowed the hall. Elara pressed her palm to the wall, tracing the cracks, searching for weakness. The stones thrummed beneath her touch, cold, yes, but something pulsed beneath, like a trapped heartbeat. The chain at her wrist tightened, metal biting deep, refusing to budge. She gritted her teeth and slid her hairpin from her braid, working it into the lock. If the keep wanted to hold her, it would have to fight for her first. Steel clicked. Then, footsteps thundered above, and a scream, sharp and human, shivered down the stairwell. A single candle flickered on the long oak table, casting warped shadows against the stone walls as Elara was led into the hall. The silver chain at her wrist rattled with every step. Rook patted at her heel, fur brushing her torn dress, eyes scanning the corners with wary intelligence. Sir Bram stood at the head of the table, back straight despite his limp. On the table before him, a thick parchment was weighed down by a silver wolf figurine. The Alpha sat at the far end, half in darkness, his eyes hidden beneath the shadow of his hair. The scent of melted wax and cold iron filled the hall. Elara's tongue felt thick, her mouth dry as sand. She thought of her family, her mother's hands, her brother's laughter, the faces that would disappear if she failed. But what if they were already watching her? Sir Bram's voice shattered the hush, crisp, precise, no trace of mercy.
These are the terms. You will remain at Blackthorn Keep until the Alpha is fully healed, or until the next full moon. If the Alpha is not restored, you forfeit your freedom. You will belong to Blackthorn, body and name, forever.
He let the words hang. The threat in them was colder than the stone beneath her feet.
And my family? The price was their safety.
Sir Bram did not meet her gaze.
They are provisioned. No harm will come so long as you honor the agreement.
At the far end, the Alpha sat unmoving, his gloved hands folded. He did not look at her. A muscle ticked along his jaw, a flash of pain or anger, gone before she could read it. A gust moaned against the arrow-slit windows. The candle guttered. Elara's eyes locked on the parchment. The script was sharp, almost cruel. The clause about the moon was circled in black ink, as if someone, at the last moment, had hesitated. Rook nudged her leg with his nose, breaking the tension. She almost smiled. If she tried, perhaps her face would crack. Sir Bram slid the contract toward her. A quill, dark with ink, rolled from its edge. The iron tang of blood lingered behind the candle wax. She didn't know if it was from the brand on her wrist or from the stones themselves. The Alpha reached into his cloak. His movement was slow, deliberate. He produced a small iron key and set it on the table, just beyond her reach. His eyes flicked up, then met hers. Storm gray. Fathomless. She felt a shiver, but couldn't look away. He turned his shoulder, as if her presence burned. She stared at the key. Was it mercy, or another kind of leash? Rook gave a quiet woof, and for a moment, the air in the hall softened. The wolfhound's tail thumped against her shin, drawing a sharp glare from Bram. The absurdity almost made her laugh. Almost. She forced herself to read every line. Her hand hesitated. If she signed, her family was safe, but her own fate sealed. If she refused, they would pay. Only the lesser wound remained. Her fingers trembled as she took the quill. The parchment stared back, hungry.
You said until the full moon. Why then?
Sir Bram's jaw tightened.
Because that is when the curse spines anew. After the moon rises, no bargain can be undone. Not by me, not by anyone.
A chill crept up her spine. Was it magic, or simply the cold? She pressed the quill to the page, signed her name. Each letter felt like a goodbye. For a moment, no one moved. Then the Alpha slid the key toward her, the metal scraping rough against the wood. It stopped at her wrist. Elara picked up the key. The lock on her chain was old, but it yielded with a soft click. The weight eased, yet her chest felt heavier. The chain was gone, but the dread remained. Sir Bram took the contract, inspecting her signature as if it were a confession. Behind him, a door creaked, too softly for a servant. She looked up, heart skipping. A pale figure flickered in the corridor, vanishing before Elara could cry out. The Alpha's chair scraped back, sharp as a blade drawn from its sheath. He was already striding after the shadow, cloak swirling, boots echoing down the stones. He never once looked at her. Elara stood with the key in her hand, the contract gone. Her wrist ached with a strange, hollow sense of freedom she didn't fully trust. The candle flickered twice, then guttered out, plunging the hall into darkness. Elara moved quietly through the main corridor, Rook's claws tapping a restless rhythm on the flagstones beside her. The air felt thick, heavy with the scent of old smoke and wet stone. Every sound seemed too loud. Her own footsteps, the soft whine of wind under the doors, the scrape of her chain against her wrist. At the first crossroads, her fingers brushed a doorway carved with tangled runes. A jolt flared in her palm, heat, then a sting, as if something inside the stone bit back. She jerked her hand away, heart thudding unevenly. Rook nudged her with his nose and whuffed, as if warning her to keep moving. She pressed on, eyes drawn by glimmers of light in the gloom. Portraits lined the wall, ancient faces, most stern, some sad. Wolf pelts and silver rings marked each figure as kin to this keep. Then, half hidden behind a splintered mirror, she saw a woman with wild gold hair and icy blue eyes. Elara stopped, breath caught in her throat. The woman's gaze seemed to meet her own, cold, searching, familiar. Around the painted wrist, a silver chain, the same crescent birthmark, pale against the collarbone. No plaque, no name, just that impossible resemblance. Something shifted behind her. Elara stiffened and turned. Alpha Kale stood at the corridor's far edge, silent and still, half his face shadowed. His eyes weren't just watching, they were reading her, reading the portrait behind her. One gloved hand tightened at his side, but then he turned and disappeared into a side passage. The only sign he'd ever existed was the faint, sharp scent of pine he left in the air. Elara exhaled, shoulders loosening. Just a little. Her heart still raced, but the tension slipped for the briefest moment. Rook pressed against her knee. She found herself grateful for the weight of him. She followed a twisting corridor, avoiding the ruined door, and found a crooked glass door smothered in ivy. With effort, she slipped through. The conservatory hit her senses at once. Humid, alive, buzzing with insects and shifting leaves. Rain spattered against glass overhead. Moonflowers glowed, their white petals open wide to the night. She reached for one, fingers trembling. The moment she touched a bloom, it withered to ash gray, collapsing in her palm. The vine jerked away as if disgusted. Cold prickled up her arm. She stumbled back, staring at her hand. A moment of stillness followed. Rook licked her fingers. Rough, dog breath warm, a comic contrast to the burning dread inside her. The hush shattered. Sir Bram's limp was unmistakable as he stepped through a shaft of moonlight, scowl deepening.
I suppose the dungeon was too dull for you.
Elara hid her burned hand, voice dry.
You've a lot of doors and not many answers.
Sir Bram's eyes narrowed. He glanced past her at the shriveled flower.
Some doors bite, some wounds don't heal. Same goes for questions.
Rook growled softly. Elara looked away from the ruined blossom, jaw tight.
Who is the woman in the hall? The one with my eyes?
Sir Bram's gaze flickered, unreadable. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned, cane thudding, and motioned her out.
Keep wandering, and the keep will chew you up. Come.
As they exited, Elara glanced back. The moonflowers had already closed, hiding their wounds. Smoke, sharp and sudden, threaded through the air. Somewhere deeper in the keep, a door slammed hard enough to rattle glass. Her chain felt heavier. She clenched her fist around the memory of the portrait. The blue eyes, the silver chain, the mark. Secrets were clawing their way out, and her own skin seemed to answer their call. Don't pause now. There's more than one door left to open. Elara stepped into the Alpha's chamber, boots scraping against the cold flagstones. The daylight was failing. Frost clung to the narrow window, making the air colder than it should have been. The chain on her wrist dragged softly behind every step. Cale waited at the table, left arm bare to the elbow. His cloak hung loose, and his face was pale, jaw set hard. The wound on his forearm glimmered with an unnatural sheen, veins spidered blue beneath the skin, traced with a brightness like ice. It looked worse than before. She forced herself to move closer. The chill pouring from his arm made her teeth ache. Her hands were clumsy as she set the satchel down. She met his eyes, stubbornly steady.
If I'm going to help, you'll have to let me touch it.
Cale nodded once. His breath clouded between them, sharp and brief. She braced her fingers above his skin. The cold radiated up her arm before she even made contact. The urge to pull away, almost overwhelming. But she pressed her fingertips to the wound. He tensed but did not move. His skin was stone cold.
Does it burn? Or is it more like crawling?
Cale looked down and mimed a crawling motion with his right hand, then tapped his chest, gaze holding hers. She understood. It was spreading towards his heart. She took a strip of linen, dipped it in alcohol. The moment she touched his skin, a biting cold shot into her palm, numbing her joints. The frost on his arm crept higher, crawling past his elbow. She tried to stifle her fear. 6 days, she guessed, maybe less. She found a tiny glass vial in her pouch, the last of her fever tonic.
I don't even know if this will help, but unless you'd rather lose the arm, I'd suggest holding still.
His lips twitched, almost a smirk. He held himself rigid. She spread the tonic over the wound. It hissed, and the veins flashed silver. Wild, jagged, alive. Cale's hand curled, his knuckles white, their hands brushed. Cold and warmth tangled, neither pulling away. A sudden crash broke the tension. Rook, the wolfhound, burst in, all legs, fur, and enthusiasm. He slid across the rushes, tangled himself in a chair, and sprawled out magnificently in the center of the floor. For an instant, everything in the grim chamber lightened.
Impeccable timing and grace, as always.
Rook's tail thudded against the stones. Cale's mouth softened, the lines of strain blurring, if only for a heartbeat. Elara's shoulders eased, her hands steadied. For a moment, the curse seemed to slow. But the instant she pulled back, the frost surged again, reaching for Cale's upper arm. She pressed harder, desperate. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere far below, a wolf's howl cracked the quiet.
What caused this? It's not a bite, not a wound from iron.
Cale's jaw tightened. He grabbed a scrap of parchment and a nub of charcoal. In stiff, urgent letters, he scribbled a single word: ritual. He slid it across the table. His hand trembled as he let go. The meaning scraped at her nerves. She met his eyes, searching for anything she could use.
If it reaches your heart, you die.
Cale looked away. The answer was written in the set of his shoulders. The candle nearest to them guttered, flame shriveling in a sudden draft. Elara saw the frost had already crept halfway to Cale's shoulder. She gripped the bloody cloth tighter. Beneath her palm, his skin was colder than any winter. And the frost kept climbing. Frost crawled farther across Cale's collarbone this morning. a thin, silvery map. Elara saw it as she entered, biting back a comment. The room was colder, yes, but it wasn't just the air. Something deeper was leaching the warmth from everything. Rain hammered the tower window, slicking stone and dripping onto the sill, while the scent of candle wax and damp wool thickened in the shadows. Rook sprawled near the hearth, chin down, but eyes sharp. Elara flexed her fingers, fighting the urge to rub warmth into her skin. The candle's flame guttered as she dug through the battered traveling chest in the corner. A half-hearted search, her nails snagged on rough, uneven leather. A false bottom. She pried it up. Beneath, a slim journal, its cover scuffed with age, clasp broken, pages edged with mildew. She opened it, every muscle tense. The handwriting inside slanted, urgent, never signing a name. A pressed blue aconite petal fell to her lap as she flipped the first page. She read aloud in a whisper, words almost lost under the thunder. Tonight he made the vow. I begged him to remember. Winter answers broken promises. She frowned, flipping ahead. The ink grew darker, blotted. Another phrase hissed out, raising the tiny hairs at the back of her neck. The one who breaks the vow must pay in silence and ice. Behind her, the floor ticked under a heavy step. Elara snapped the journal shut, pulse leaping. Rook sat up, a low woof tumbling from his throat. Kale stood in the doorway, black hair damp, eyes catching firelight like storm clouds ready to burst. The frost had spread to his jaw, turning his skin ashen at the edge. He glanced at the journal in her hands, then at her face, gaze unreadable. He didn't move closer. Elara stayed standing, shoulders squared, the journal tight in her grip.
This belonged to her, didn't it? Your sister. Why is there no name?
Kale's eyes narrowed, then softened. He reached for his belt, slipping free a slate and stub of chalk. He hesitated, fingers shaking, then wrote with uneven pressure. Trust. He held the slate out. His hand trembled, and for a moment his knuckles went white with the effort. Elara took it from him, reading the word as the chalk smeared her palm.
Trust?
She huffed, low and bitter.
You keep every door locked around here, even your own story.
Kale's brows drew together. He reached for the back of the chair, but his balance faltered. Elara's instinct won. She caught his wrist, steadying him. His skin was freezing, not like ice, but like marble left out all winter. She fought the urge to pull away.
Sit, or you'll snap in half.
She helped him to the chair by the fire, Rook pressing close and nuzzling Kale's knee with a clumsy whine. Kale offered the faintest ghost of a smile and scratched Rook's ear, his fingers leaving tiny white flecks on the dog's fur. For a moment, silence was filled only by the rain. Candle smoke curled in uneven loops above the hearth. Elara exhaled, jaw unclenching. She sat opposite him, flipping the journal open again. Her eyes tracked the lines. No names, always my brother, and mention after mention of a winter ritual, but never the details. A fresh page read. He swore to stay. He left. Now we all pay. A splinter of dread wedged beneath her ribs. She looked up. Kale watched her with a rawness that made it hard to meet his gaze. The frost on his throat glistened as he swallowed. He took up the slate again, slower this time, and with a shuddering breath, wrote 2 words. Help me. The chalk broke. He pressed the slate to his chest, breath coming quick, shoulders hunched. Rook wagged his tail, a sudden thump against Elara's boot, cutting the tension for a heartbeat.
If you want help, you have to give me more than puzzle pieces.
Kale's mouth twisted, frustration or apology. She couldn't tell. He tucked the slate against his thigh, fingers splayed out as if, for a moment, he needed to hold something solid. For a blink, Elara almost laughed, not with humor, but with the wild relief that comes when danger pauses, just long enough for your mind to catch up. She stood, journal clutched close.
Fine, if you won't tell me. I don't care how many doors you lock. I'll find out myself. But I'm not leaving you to freeze while I do it.
Cale didn't reply, his jaw clenched, eyes fierce. As Elara turned, the candle guttered out, plunging half the room in gloom. She walked to the door. Wind rattled the warped wood, but inside, new resolve braced her spine. She glanced back, Cale hunched over, frost creeping higher, Rook pressed loyal at his boots. Elara gripped the journal, stepping out into the corridor where the scent of wet stone and old secrets waited. This time, her steps didn't falter. She had a clue, and for the first time, an unspoken promise. She would break this silence, even if it meant shattering the keep itself. Frost claimed Elara's fingertips as she followed Cale up the spiral stairs. Her breath prickled at the back of her throat. The chain on her wrist dragged with each step. Behind her, the storm battered the keep. Wind shrieked through cracks. Thunder making the stones tremble. At the top, Cale unlocked a warped door. Hinges protested. The room inside was small. Stone walls, a single narrow window rimmed in frost, the scent of stale herbs, and tallow candles burning low. He closed the door behind them, the bolt scraping metal on stone. Cale moved quickly to the desk. No words, just the soft thud of his boots and the rustle of parchment. He grabbed a piece and wrote. Gloved hand stiff, he slid the note across the desk. Elara's fingers, cold and cracked, traced the edge of the paper. The message was, spare, break my curse, I'll free you and your family. Never ask about my sister. The air thickened between them. Cale's eyes, those storm-gray depths, didn't flinch from hers. His silence was deliberate, not absence, but control. Rook trotted in and flopped beside the cot, giving Elara's ankle a reassuring nudge with his nose. She almost smiled at the wolfhound's warmth, the only thing in the room not touched by winter. She picked up the charcoal, her hand leaving a faint black trail on the parchment. She wrote, pressing hard, not enough. I want proof. Take off the chain. I decide how to help. No lies. Cale's jaw clenched. He hesitated just long enough that she saw it wasn't anger, but something more fragile, some cost hidden behind the scar on his cheek. He wrote again, movements deliberate. Signet is proof. My word. He rolled a silver ring toward her. She picked it up. It was heavy, etched with a wolf's head, faintly warm where it had pressed against his skin. She threaded it onto her finger. The metal left a cold, bright stripe against her hand, but her pulse steadied with the weight. Lightning split the world outside. The candle stuttered, shadows leaping across Cale's face. Then, a gust. The light died, and they were plunged into blackness. Elara reached out, searching for the flint. Her fingers collided with Cale's. Even through his gloves, his palm radiated heat. They didn't move. For a second, touch was the only language, the steady press of his hand, the hush of their breaths, her awareness sharpened by the dark and the storm. She drew away first, surprised by a shaky laugh.
If this is teamwork, we could set the whole tower on fire.
Rook snorted, tail thumping against a cot, and the moment broke. Elara fumbled for the tinder box, the dry rasp of flint on stone, echoing in the gloom. She coaxed a spark, flames blooming, painting Cale's face gold and weary. Cale wrote one last note, sliding it toward her. No questions about my sister. If you break this, the deal ends. She picked up the ring again. Its warmth now felt like a promise or a warning. Elara looked at Cale, not backing down.
If your curse spreads any faster, you'll freeze before I can help. I need supplies. And access to every room you've locked. Otherwise, I walk.
Cale's mouth pressed into a line, He nodded once, sharp and silent. Suddenly, Rook bristled. Elara caught a whiff of something wrong. Not just candle wax and old herbs, but scorched cloth, bitter as fear. She turned. Frost crawled down the wall behind Kale, faster than before, spider webbing toward the floor. Before she could speak, a voice echoed from below. Sir Bram's, clipped and tense.
Alpha, you're needed. The old chapel door is open. That's not possible.
Elara inhaled, her grip on the signet white-knuckled. The pact was struck, but something else had already slipped past their guard. Kale moved sudden and purposeful, shoulders squared. He didn't write a word, just looked back, gaze fixed on Elara, then strode toward the door. For the first time, she followed not as a captive, but as someone with a claim. She shut the tower room behind them, the ring biting into her skin, the taste of iron on her tongue, and questions multiplying in the dark. Elara flexed her fingers, but they barely moved. The numbness had crept up her hand, stiff as old leather. Across the room, Kale lay on the narrow bed, blue veins now webbed across his collarbone and threading toward his heart. Every so often, his breath left the faintest plume in the lamplight, the air sharp with the bitter tang of pine resin and singed parchment. She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling the chill that radiated through the thin fabric of his tunic. The spell she'd risked was sour and metallic on her tongue, words she'd sworn she'd never use. Her thoughts tangled with fear, not just for him, but for what was happening inside her own skin. Kale's eyes met hers, gray and depthless, an accusation and a plea at once. She held his gaze, then muttered the forbidden phrase again, forcing her magic into him, refusing to flinch. Heat prickled across her neck. Her jaw tightened, willing her stubbornness to count for something. Pain lanced her wrist. A crack of cold shot up her arm, as if someone had poured ice into her veins. She gasped, nearly falling against him, her vision fracturing for an instant. Along her fingertips, frost bloomed in fragile patterns, stinging like nettles. She jerked her hand away. Tiny crystals slid to the floor, tinkling across the stone. The taste of burnt metal filled her mouth, sharp enough to choke. Without a word, Kale reached for her. His hand was steady, colder than hers, but deliberate. No excuse, no accident. He covered her frostbitten hand with his, held her for one electrified moment. The weight of his silence pressed against her chest. The crash of the door sent a candlestick tumbling. Rook bounded in, paws thudding, a wild gust of earth and wet fur following him. He shook himself extravagantly, then deposited a moth-eaten cloak onto Elara's lap, trailing the musty scent of dried rosemary and mud.
That's generous, Rook. Just what I needed. Mud and moldering rags.
The wolfhound's tail thumped the floor. You're welcome. I'd have brought slippers, but somebody ate them last winter. Elara managed a half laugh, shifting the cloak over her knees. Her skin crawled from the cold, but the feel of the rough wool and the reek of herbs grounded her. Beneath the absurdity, Rook's eyes flicked with worry. Kale was already reaching for the table. He picked up a charcoal stub and, hands shaking, scribbled on a scrap of parchment. He tore the paper free, sliding it toward Elara. The note read, "It's spreading. If you keep going, it'll take you to." She stared at the words. Her pulse fluttered in her throat, wild and uncertain. It could pass from him to her? Or was she only a conduit, a vessel for someone else's suffering? The fear was colder than the frost now hugging her bones. But she wasn't ready to let go. She folded the note, feeling every splinter of pain through her hand, and took her place at his side again. The room seemed to shrink. The steady drip of melting wax, Rook's nervous shuffle, the distant scrape of wind along the shutters.
If I stop now, you die. That's not happening. Not for a curse, not for anyone.
Kale's stare sharpened, desperate and angry. His hand hovered over hers, but didn't pull her away. She pressed her palm to his chest, magic burning along her skin. daring the curse to claim her. Her vision doubled. It felt like drowning, each breath more ragged, every heartbeat a question. You know, starting to think you two might be competing for who can look the most like a snowdrift. Elara let out a brittle sound, somewhere between a laugh and a groan. The scrape of Rook's tail on stone was oddly comforting. From the corridor, boots hammered against the floorboards, a cane thumping in counterpoint. Sir Bram's voice snapped, cold as a drawn blade.
What in the name of Blackthorn have you done? Move away from him, now!
Elara kept her hand where it was. Even as the curse gnawed higher up her arm, she didn't move, didn't blink. And for the first time, she wondered not if she could save KL, but if she'd survive trying. The frost climbed her wrist. Sir Bram's footsteps closed in. KL's eyes burned. Elara's answer was simple. She didn't let go. Frost mapped Elara's hands by dawn, thin blue lines threading her skin. The cold was worse each morning now, as if the curse itself was counting down. Rook pressed against her shin, silent as she nudged open the conservatory door. Wet green scents mingled with the sharper bite of winter air. Glass above glimmered with water trails, turning sunlight into fractured gold. The portrait watched from the far end, the woman with cool eyes and a silver locket. A locket just like Elara's own. She hesitated, thumb brushing the chain at her throat. Something about being here always felt like trespassing. Rook whined, nosing at a cracked stone planter. Elara crouched, boots creasing fallen moss. A slip of parchment was wedged deep between the tiles, its ribbon frayed but intact. Heart stumbling. She worked it free. The paper shivered in her grip as she opened it. Ink had bled in places, but the lines were careful. She read in a whisper, voice barely a breath. The letter said, KL, I made the vow to save the child, Elara. Forgive me. The price was silence. If she lives, so must your curse. I never thought the moon would demand so much. Mira, Elara's stomach twisted. Her name, the vow, the locket, a memory flickered. A stranger's arms lifting her from fire, a silver chain pressed to her palm. She blinked hard, fighting a too bright sting in her eyes. A chill moved across the room. She looked up. Kale stood at the threshold, tension sharp in every muscle. His gaze found the letter, then her face. He didn't speak, couldn't, but the pain was plain. Elara steadied herself. She crumpled the letter in her fist, forcing her voice level.
This curse, it's because I survived?
Kale stepped forward, silent as a memory. He reached out, hesitation flickering in his eyes. His gloved thumb brushed frost from her hand. The touch sent warmth racing up her arm. Unfamiliar, and almost too much. She caught his wrist, holding his hand there. Their faces were close now. Breath shared, her chest aching with questions.
I should have known. You're paying for me.
He shook his head, fierce denial, but she squeezed tighter.
Why not tell me? Why spare me at all?
Kale stared at her, storm gray eyes raw, jaw clenched. He pressed his free hand flat over his chest, then pointed at her. The gesture was clear. His vow was for her, not himself. Tension snapped, replaced by something reckless. Elara leaned in, voice shaking.
Break the vow, and what? I die? Or you do? There must be another way.
He froze. For a heartbeat, she thought, hoped, he'd answer. Instead, he drew back, his hand falling away. The space between them felt colder. Rook shoved his head between them, tail thumping. Elara laughed, the sound thin but genuine. Then she noticed his fur was streaked with something darker than mud. Not just dirt, a smear of dried blood. Her faint smile died. A realization snapped through her. If someone was hurt in the keep, or worse, it was tied to this bargain. She stood, eyes on KL.
I'm done being a secret. If my survival is the reason for all this, I want answers. Tonight. No more hidden letters. No more watching me like I'm a threat or a relic. We end this, or I walk out of here and let them find me.
Kale's expression shifted, thunderstruck. He nodded, once, solemn. She turned to gather the letter and brushed her locket, pulse racing. Rook whined again, pressing close. In the dirt where he'd been sniffing, something glittered. A shard of glass stained crimson. Elara picked it up, cold biting her fingers. She looked at Kale, accusation on her tongue. Then footsteps pounded down the corridor. Sir Bram's limp, unmistakable, and a single word rang out, flat and final.
Stop!
Everything changed. Frost feathered Elara's lashes when she climbed the battlements, boots crunching over hoarfrost that hadn't been there the night before. The cold bit sharper than memory. Each night it crept further. Now her lips tingled, numb, turning blue at the edges. She pressed gloved hands to her mouth to hide the trembling. But Kael noticed. He always did. A wolf's howl tore through the darkness below, wild and ragged. More voices joined, echoing off crumbling stone. Blackthorn's cursed pack was restless tonight. The full moon hovered just out of sight, pale as bone behind whirling cloud. Elara tried to count how many wolves were out there, but the cacophony made numbers meaningless. Was something out there she didn't see? Kale stood at her side, silent and rigid, eyes fixed beyond the ramparts. He looked barely human in the moonlight, more a shadow carved from ice and iron. Frost coiled up his jaw, following the long scar, spiderwebbing to his cheekbone. When he exhaled, the vapor hung oddly thick, as if even his breath was turning to snow. Rook barreled past, tail snaking giant paws, slipping on frozen stone. He chased his own tail in exuberant, oblivious loops, skidding dangerously close to the edge.
If you fall off, I'm not climbing down there to fetch you.
The wolfhound barked, tongue lolling as if daring her. For a heartbeat, Elara grinned. The absurdity. A healer and a cursed alpha on a death watch, and a wolfhound waging war against his own tail. Her chest almost loosened, but the wind shifted. Elara's smile died. Animal fear prickled her skin. She could smell it, sharp and earthy, tainted with iron. Down below, a pack of wolves circled the outer yard, eyes glowing unnatural amber in the dark. Kale's gloved hand hovered just above hers on the parapet, close enough that she felt the cold radiating from his skin. Close enough that, if she leaned the smallest fraction, their shoulders would touch. A shudder, not entirely from the cold. Elara's breath hitched. She saw Kale looking at her mouth, his own lips pale, chapped, flecked with frost, their faces inches apart, breath mingling in the icy air. But then, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow in the darkness, something lurking just beyond her sight. A wolf howled again, closer this time. The sound was raw, not hunger but agony. Rook froze mid-spin, hackles up, a warning rumble deep in his chest. Elara tensed. She caught Kale's eye. He signed with gloved fingers, a gesture she'd learned to read. Stay close. Before she could answer, a harsh voice cut through the gale.
You two! Down from there. Now. The yard's not secure.
Sir Bram's limp was more pronounced against the rush of urgency. He scanned the battlements, eyes narrowing.
3 wolves broke the south gate. I found one bleeding, silver in its fur.
Elara's gut twisted. Silver, the only thing that could truly wound a shifter. Someone had been hunting the cursed wolves again. Not just hunting, using forbidden magic. She glanced at Kale, reading the tension in his set jaw. Rook pressed against her legs, quivering.
If this is your idea of a fun night out, I want a refund.
Her voice wobbled, but Rook's tail thumped once, grateful for the joke. Kale's eyes softened, just for a moment. Then the cold surged again. Elara's fingertips stung, blue at the tips, the spreading frost threatening to numb her arms. She pressed her hands to her chest, breath shallow. Kale seized her wrist, not gently. His grip was iron, but his eyes were frantic. He pulled off his own glove with his teeth and pressed his bare palm to her cheek. Cold, and yet, beneath it, a flicker of heat, his own magic wrestling the encroaching numbness. Their faces a breath apart. Elara tried to laugh, to break the moment.
Your bedside manner's getting better. Still needs work.
He didn't smile. His gaze burned, desperate, pleading. The frost crept higher, a white line reaching for his heart. Sir Bram's footsteps pounded toward them, breaking the spell.
Alpha, there's something else. I found runes burned into the gate. Not ours.
Kale jerked away, spine rigid. Elara's skin tingled where he'd touched her. Or maybe it was the frost returning. She swallowed, throat raw. An open question thudded between them. If Kale succumbed to the curse tonight, what would happen to her? To the keep? Was her own life already forfeit? Or was there still a bargain left to make? Down in the yard, the wounded wolf began to scream. An unnatural twisting sound, more human than beast. Elara shivered so hard her teeth clicked. She didn't know what was worse, the cold or the feeling that something unseen was watching her. Kale stared at her, eyes wide, color draining from his face. He scrawled a message on his palm. If I change, run. But before she could protest, a blast of wind slammed the door behind them, and a new, unfamiliar scent, scorched iron and bitter herbs, flooded the battlements. The frost had crept up Elara's arms overnight. Silver veins shimmered beneath her skin, rising almost to her elbows now. Each movement made her joints ache, as if the curse inside her was learning her bones. She pressed her fingers together, longing for warmth. But the chapel air was colder still. Kale led her through the ruined archway, his steps silent. Rook's nails clicked across the flagstones behind them, a soft counterpoint to the hush. The scent of charred wax hung thick, mixed with damp stone and something deeper, old grief, sealed inside these walls. Candle stubs ringed the altar, their wicks drowned in tears of white. Kale paused, gloved hand resting on the altar's rim, and looked back. In his other hand, he held a battered notebook and a stub of charcoal. He wrote, his jaw tight, the scar on his cheek catching the morning light. It's here it began. He placed the notebook where she could see, then stepped aside, giving her a clear view of the altar. Deep grooves gouged the marble. Claw marks, or something worse. Dried blood stained the seams. Elara's pulse faltered. The memory of the portrait flickered behind her eyes. Kale's mother, the silver locket clasped at her throat. The same locket hung now from his hand, the chain catching in his glove. He set it before her, not at her feet, but in her palm. The chain was icy, the weight impossibly familiar. She closed her fingers around it, feeling the etched design, a crescent entwined with thorns. It matched her own locket, the one she wore hidden under her dress, never daring to take off. Questions crowded her throat, sharp as ice. She forced a word out.
Why show me this?
Kale's gaze flicked to her collarbone, to the faint birthmark peeking above the torn fabric, then to the locket in her fist. He shook his head, not refusal, but something gentler. He wrote again, fast, as if afraid the words might freeze before reaching her. You're not a prisoner, not to me. He hesitated, then drew a line underneath. His hand trembled. Both lockets, keys. The words bled into the page. He slid the notebook towards her, inviting, almost pleading. The frost inside Elara's chest twisted, sharp enough to make her shiver. She wanted to run from it. Run from him, from the altar, from everything the lockets meant. But Kale's hand shot out, catching her wrist before she could move. His grip was firm, not bruising. His eyes found hers, storm gray and raw. For a breathless moment, Elara couldn't look away. The world narrowed to his touch, the ghost warmth of his skin through the glove, the way his shoulders hunched as if bracing for pain. She realized he was shaking, not from cold, but from something like fear. Behind them, Rook gave a soft, questioning whine, tail thumping. The moment broke, just enough for Elara to breathe. She exhaled, long and shaky, her grip loosening around the locket. Her pulse rattled unevenly. The curse's frost gnawed at her ribs, and she saw Cale's jaw clench, as if he felt the same ice. She tried to steady her voice.
If we unite them, what happens to us?
Cale didn't answer. He only lifted her hand. The locket tangled between their fingers and pressed it gently to his heart. In that instant, the frost inside her flared. Not pain, but a wild, searing heat. It left her dizzy, breathless, unsure if she wanted to pull away or fall forward. The chapel doors groaned as wind rattled the stained glass, sending colored shards across the altar. Elara flinched, heart racing, as an icy draft swept through, and in its wake, a third locket glimmered in the dust beneath the altar, right where the blood had dried. She stared at it, numb from more than cold. How many keys were there, and who or what was waiting for them to turn? The frost had reached Cale's chest by the time Elara yanked open the crypt door. Each breath burned. Her fingers, numb and aching, fumbled with the silver chain at her wrist. Cale staggered behind, boots scraping stone. One gloved hand pressed to his heart. Sir Bram waited at the bottom of the spiral. His silhouette was sharp against lantern glow, silver ring glinting as he leaned on his cane. The crypt stank of old wax and wet earth.
What did you do?
She tried for fury, but her voice cracked. Cale's body shook with cold. The frost had crept past his collarbone, veining his skin in branching white-blue lines. Sir Bram didn't move. When he spoke, his voice was thin as a blade.
He was never meant to wake. The curse was a mercy for what he carries.
Elara's stomach twisted. She looked from Bram to Cale, searching for denial in the Alpha's eyes. Nothing. Cale met her gaze, his jaw locked, storm gray eyes wild with pain. He tried to write on his slate, but his limbs shook too hard. The chalk clattered uselessly to the floor. Bram's cane tapped the flagstones. He looked at Elara, not Cale.
Your mother lied to you. The birthmark, the chain. You carry Blackthorn's blood. Royal, wolf-blooded, not human.
The world constricted, a tunnel narrowing to Bram's words. Elara's vision blurred at the edges. Sweat prickled her skin despite the biting chill.
You're lying. My mother was...
A runaway. She hit you because the prophecy said a royal-blooded healer would break the old bond. End both the curse and the wolves.
Elara staggered, knuckles white against the crypt wall. The thick air tasted of iron. She forced herself to focus on Cale. His breathing was shallow, eyes locked on hers as if begging her to understand something he could not say. A heavy, animal sound echoed down the stairwell. Rook burst from the dark, fur bristling, teeth bared. He barreled straight into Bram's legs, sending the old man sprawling. Bram's cane flew, clattering across stone. Should have stuck to chess, old man. For a split second, the world snapped into absurdity. Elara almost laughed. Almost, but Cale swayed, knees buckling as the frost leapt from chest to throat, blooming beneath skin in pale, terrible patterns. She caught him. Barely. His weight drove her back against the wall, faces close. She smelled the cold on his skin, the tang of fear, or something raw. His hand closed over hers, ice digging bone deep. She tried to steady him, but her own vision was flickering, black spots darting at the edges. For a moment, Cale's eyes burned into hers. Desperate, pleading, furious, he mouthed a word. She could not read it. Bram groaned on the ground, Rook standing on his chest. You want me to bite him? Or do you have a plan? Elara's lips parted, words tangling with panic. She stared at the silver chain, at Kale's hand gripping hers like he was drowning. If she used her power now, she might save him. But the cost, another crack ran through Kale's skin, frost crawling along his neck. He gasped, teeth clenched. She had seconds, maybe less. In the silence, she heard Bram whisper, low, trembling.
You trust too easily, Elara. That's how kingdoms fall.
A memory flashed. The note pressed into her palm weeks ago. Trust no one. Her own hand shook, the weight of Kale against her, the burning cold, the choice clawing at her chest.
If I save him, what happens to me?
Bram's eyes glittered from the floor.
You break the bargain. You bind yourself here forever.
Rook shifted his weight, pinning Bram harder. For a heartbeat, Elara almost laughed again, this time at the ridiculousness of her life. Royal blood, curses, a wolfhound standing guard like a knight. But Kale's grip slackened, his body going suddenly heavy, time fractured. Elara's mind spun with a choice. Her lips brushed Kale's forehead, not quite a kiss, but so close breath mingled with frost. Their faces were inches apart, hearts racing. She almost... A sound split the silence. The chain snapped. Elara's world narrowed to Kale's eyes, wild with something between terror and hope. And then, everything changed. Elara's fingers had gone blue by the time the chapel doors groaned shut behind her. The silver veins climbing her wrist pulsed, this time with a cold that gnawed straight through bone. Each breath scraped her throat raw. Moonlight sliced through stained glass, painting Kale's still form in broken colors. He was sprawled on the altar steps. Frost had claimed his lashes, crystallized across that sharp jaw. His knuckles, curled, looked carved from marble. The locket he wore glinted, silver, twin to hers, both heavy with old magic. Blood roared in Elara's ears, drowning out Rook's low whine as the wolfhound pressed his huge, cold head against her leg. She staggered, every step heavier, as if something was dragging her backward through snow. Sir Bram's cane tapped behind her, steady, infuriatingly calm.
You're out of time. The curse will kill you both if you falter now.
Elara almost laughed. It would sound like glass shattering in her throat.
And if I break my bond? Walk away?
Her voice trembled. No one answered. Kale's eyes fluttered open, storm gray, frantic, a silent plea. His chest barely moved. She dropped to her knees beside him. The frost on his lips looked like a last defense. There were two ways. She could shatter her own locket, snap the chain, destroy the bond. Her legs screamed for it. But Kale would die, alone, silent, forgotten even by the stones of Blackthorn. Or she could attempt the forbidden ritual. Both lockets, blood and vow, old words that tasted like ash. The price was unknown, and that was always the costliest kind. Rook pressed against her, body trembling. His breath came in sharp, visible clouds. If you die, I'll eat Sir Bram's hat and his left boot. The words cut through the panic. Sir Bram grunted, whether in protest or fear, she couldn't tell.
It's not a laughing matter. Choose quickly, girl.
Elara looked down. Kale's gloved hand lifted weakly. He traced the chain on her wrist, his touch ghosting over freezing skin. She wanted to scream. Instead, her voice broke, so small, it barely existed.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be. I can't let you die.
The world shrank to two lockets. Her curse, his silence. Her memory, his life. One had to break. She pressed the lockets together. The silver burned, not cold, but searing, brighter than lightning. Words rose unbidden from somewhere deeper than language. The ancient rite tumbled from her lips, syllables she'd never learned, but her blood remembered. Magic screamed down her spine. The air snapped, sharp as a wolf's teeth. Kale convulsed. Frost spiderwebbed up Elara's arms, across her chest, tightening, choking, clawing for her mind. She searched his face, willing him to come back, his eyes wide, frightened, lips nearly blue. Desperation drove her. Elara leaned in. Her mouth found his. The taste was winter and iron, pain and longing. She kissed him like it was the last warmth in the world, willing every memory, every flicker of self into him. A wave of heat slammed through her. Fire fought the frost. The locket cracked in her fist. Light exploded behind her eyes. For a moment, time splintered. Elara saw fragments. A woman in a red cloak? Her mother? Running through snow, a river glinting beneath moonlight. Kale's hand, bloodied, reaching for hers. A promise whispered in a language she no longer understood. Then, nothing. The cold was gone. Her body sagged, muscles finally unclenching. Rook nosed her hand, whimpering. Sir Bram's cane slipped, hitting stone. Kale breathed, deep, ragged, alive. His hand cupped her cheek, skin warmer than it had ever been. Elara blinked at him. There was a man before her, tall, eyes dark as storms, a scar she couldn't place. He looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd asked a lifetime ago. But something was missing. Her mind scrambled at the emptiness. Names, faces, memories, they scattered like ash in wind.
Who are you?
Her voice shook. Kale's eyes widened. For the first time, she saw fear there, not for himself, but for her. A silence fell, sharp as the crack of ice. Rook whined, pressing closer, tail thumping weakly. Sir Bram's hand trembled on his cane. Heat bloomed in Elara's chest, unfamiliar and raw, but behind it, a void. Her name, she remembered, but nothing that came before this moment. Kale's hand lingered on her face. His lips parted, but no words came. The curse's grip had broken, but at a cost Elara couldn't measure. The shattered lockets lay in her palm, cold. Somewhere outside, a bell began to toll, distant, ominous, insistent. Elara stared at the broken silver, her empty mind filling with fresh terror. What had she just sacrificed, and what exactly had she set free? Elara woke to the scrape of stone and the weight of someone's arms around her. Cloth rough against her cheek, warmth solid and steady, pressed her close. Her own name floated at the edge of thought, slippery as rain on glass. Something was missing. She couldn't remember what. The chamber was dim, cold. The air was thick with the scent of burnt pine and candle wax, sharp enough it made her want to cough. Somewhere nearby a dog whined. Nails scratched the flagstones. Uncertain, a man held her. The tremor in his body vibrated through her bones. She blinked hard, trying to make the world settle. His breath ran ragged. She tasted salt on her lips, not her own. She tried to speak, but her tongue felt unused, a stranger in her own mouth. Her hands fumbled for purchase, grasping at the sleeve of a tunic, black wool nearly threadbare at the cuff. But the man's arms tightened. He shifted, pulling her closer, desperate, almost feverish. The silence that followed was not empty. It throbbed with something waiting, something trapped too long. Then, for the first time, she heard his voice.
Elara.
One word, rough as gravel, unfamiliar to his own throat. The resonance of it filled the keep's stones, echoed out across the years. Elara's heart stuttered. Her name, it sounded wrong and right, like a melody she should know but couldn't sing.
You brought me back.
Not a question, a statement torn from somewhere deep. Cale pulled back so she could see him, his face pale in the candlelight. The scar cutting across his cheek looked raw, as if the magic itself had left it burning. His eyes searched hers, storm-dark and hungry for something she no longer held.
Do you remember me?
His voice was hoarse, splintered at the edges, every word costing blood. The keep, for the first time in years, was filled with his voice, and it sounded nothing like legend, not thunder, not command. Just a man, exhausted and afraid. Elara pressed a hand to her throat. Her mind spun, empty, grasping at shadows that refused to resolve.
I'm sorry.
Her voice was thin. She stared at the mark on her wrist, a silver chain she didn't know the history of. A massive wolfhound nudged her elbow. Rook's fur was damp, his nose insistent. He whined again, a sound she recognized, though she didn't know why. She buried her fingers in his ruff, desperate for something real. Sir Bram stood in the doorway, face drawn and ashen. His cane clicked once against the stone, then stilled. They all watched her like she was an answer to a question they couldn't ask. Cale's jaw worked. He reached for her hand, stopped, fist clenching.
You said you'd do anything. You did.
He let the words hang between them, ghost-like.
What did I do?
Rain battered the windows, wind snatching at half-broken shutters. In the hush, Cale spoke, voice softer now, stripped bare.
You took the curse, my silence. The pain was meant for me, not you.
He closed his eyes, shoulders shaking. When he opened them, something like awe flickered in the depths.
I will tell you everything, even if you never remember.
For a moment, all she could do was watch his mouth form the words, a miracle, terrible, and wonderful at once. Then the emptiness in her mind yawned wide, swallowing names and promises before she could hold them. Something vital had been traded. She felt it, pressing closer. The wolfhound's breath was warm against her wrist, anchoring her to now. Cale's voice, trembling and alive, filled the dark. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, all she could do was listen.
Will you stay, even if you don't know me?
Elara looked down at the silver chain, the crescent birthmark at her collarbone, aching faintly. Her answer tangled in her throat, uncertain. A gust slammed the shutters open. Candlelight flickered, and from the broken window, a distant howl split the world apart. The frost had crept to Elara's elbow by dawn, sharp as a warning. She walked with Cale along the keep's high western wall, where wind scraped at her cheeks and sun bled through the clouds in thin golden bands. Her boots scuffed loose stones. Cale's shadow flickered beside her, longer than his body, as if it wanted to stay hidden. Rook darted ahead. His gray fur caught the weak light, a living blur against ruined battlements. Every so often, he glanced back, tongue lolling, waiting for her to catch up. Cale's steps faltered at the edge where shadow met sunlight. His jaw tightened. For months, he'd never crossed that threshold. The sun always seemed to burn him from within, even when it couldn't reach his skin. Now, for her, he put one gloved hand against the wall and stepped forward. He did not burst or flinch. Sunlight painted the scar on his cheek, picked out silver streaks in his dark hair. Quietly, he reached into his cloak and pulled out a crumpled scrap of parchment, pressing it into her hand. The words scrawled there were rough, desperate. You made me promise not to fear the sun. Here you laughed. Here I almost believed I could be more than the monster they see. Her chest twisted. The memory hovered, close, urgent, but still out of reach. She gripped the note so hard the edges cut her palm. KL watched her, silent. In the new light, his storm gray eyes were brighter. Unguarded, he looked at his glove, then at her hand, as if asking permission. She nodded. He slipped his hand into hers. His skin was cool, fingers trembling, but he didn't pull away.
You did that for me? Even now.
He nodded, slow and sure. His eyes searched her face, pleading for something she couldn't name. A crow cried overhead. Rook brushed against her leg, insistent. His cold nose found her palm, and that anchoring touch jolted through her like a spark, a flash. Sunlight, the warmth of Kale's arms, her own laughter spinning free, Rook bounding between them. 3 shadows tangled on ancient stone. Her throat tightened.
I remember, at least I think I do, a moment just like this. All of us here.
Kale's grip tightened. For a heartbeat, she thought he might draw her close, but he only brushed his thumb over her knuckles, slower than breath. Then he let go. She shivered, half from cold, half from something else blooming inside her. The curse's ache faded, replaced by something lighter, fragile, but real. She looked up, searching his face.
Why do you keep fighting for me, Kale? What if the memories never come back?
He pressed a hand to his chest, then touched her wrist, where the silver chain glinted, and frost still crept. His answer was unspoken, but it thudded against her ribs. Because you're worth fighting for, memory or not. Rook growled, not in warning, but in impatience. He nudged her with his head, almost knocking her into Kale. She managed a shaky laugh, the first in weeks. She let herself hope, just for an instant. Below, a distant clang echoed through the stone. Metal striking rock, sharp and wrong. Cold air rushed up from the crypts, smelling of earth, secrets, and old blood. The sound cut her laughter short. Kale's face changed. The sunlight no longer seemed gentle. Elara's fingers closed over the parchment, heart racing. She turned toward the stairwell, knowing nothing would ever be the same after this new breach. Rook barked once, a warning this time, as a shadow moved in the open crypt below. The conservatory air was sharp with the scent of rain and bruised leaves. Elara's boots left muddy arcs across the tile. Each step, hers, not forced. Here again, but this time, no chains, no waiting captors. Her hands shook. She moved toward the far wall. The portrait waited, half hidden behind creeping vines. Kale's sister, that same calm sadness, eyes rimmed in silver. Around her neck, 2 lockets tangled. One gold, one the battered silver that had pressed against Elara's own skin since childhood. Only now, seeing them together, did she understand what she'd lost. Beneath the frame, a single word was carved, each letter deep and raw. Hope. The ache in her chest ached worse, not for a fairy tale memory, but for the faces and voices she would never find again. She pressed her thumb to the locket, feeling its familiar edges. The cost was real, and it hurt. A living wound. Rook patted in, leaving wet paw prints behind. He bumped her hip with his nose, tail sweeping fragile orchids off the bench. A soft snort. He looked up at her, tongue poking from his jaws as if daring her to scold him for ruining the silence. Elara managed a snort of her own, her lips quirking. Her voice was thin but steady.
That's the last clean patch, Rook. I hope you're proud.
He sneezed again, flinging droplets up her skirt. Only Rook could make her laugh at the edge of breaking. Footsteps. She turned. Kale stood in the archway, hair unbound, frost still clinging to his coat. He didn't speak, not while the curse held. His eyes locked on hers, asking a question he'd never say out loud. She faced him, the chain still cold on her wrist, the locket biting into her palm.
My past is gone. I'm choosing anyway.
The words shook as they left her. Her memories unraveled, faces fading, names dissolving. She could feel them tearing loose. piece by piece, never to be recovered. The pain was sharp, like skin stripped raw. She wanted to scream. She stood still instead. Cale stepped forward, palms open. He held out a folded scrap of paper, edges worn thin. She took it, hands trembling harder than she wanted to admit. The note was written in careful, unfamiliar script. "I will find you again and again if I have to." Her throat closed. She pressed the paper to her lips, the ink smearing.
Then find me here, as I am. I'm not running anymore.
Sun broke through the high glass. Light hit the lockets, scattering bright lines across the floor. The chain slipped free, landing with a metallic whisper that seemed impossibly loud. Her mind stuttered, blanks opening where laughter, love, and loss should have lived. This was the price, not just forgetting, but knowing she had chosen to forget. The ache of it, rooted deep, a hollow that might never fill. Rook nudged her again, more insistent. She found herself smiling through wet eyes. Some fresh start. One dog, one silent alpha, one girl with empty pockets where her memories used to be. From the corridor, Bram's voice echoed, brittle but alive.
If you're done redecorating, Miss Elara, there's bread before it's stale and tea before it burns.
A laugh bubbled up, unexpected and sharp. Elara squeezed Cale's fingers, held on, until she felt him squeeze back. The marble beneath her feet was cold, but the sun was warm. The old word, hope, glinted beneath the portrait, bright as a promise. She had nothing left of before, but this moment was hers. She stepped forward, breath-catching, into the new life she had paid for in memory and pain. Some things could never be reclaimed, but some, she found, as Cale's hand remained in hers, could be chosen every day. The chapel smelled of melted wax and wild thyme. Someone had tried to scrub away the old blood, but the scent lingered in the cracks between stones. Morning light streamed through colored glass, painting fractured rainbows over the altar. Elara paused at the threshold. Last time she'd stood here, her wrists were chained. Now her skin bore only a faint scar, cool and almost hidden beneath the cuff of her dress. Rook padded in beside her. His claws clicked softly against the flagstones. He pressed his massive head into her palm, warm and solid. The world steadied. Cale waited ahead, half in sunlight, half in shadow. His shoulders were less rigid now. He met her gaze, then held out his gloved hand. No words, only an invitation. She crossed the aisle and slipped her fingers into his. His hand was steady. He pressed a piece of twisted metal into her palm. A broken chain, bent into a ring. The cold weight sent a rush through her, sharp and frightening and real. Sir Bram stood by the door, his cane tapping once in the quiet. He watched, blue-gray eyes stern but soft. Elara let out a shaky breath. The air tasted of salt and something sweet.
We can't change the past. My memories are gone, but I remember this. Standing here, with all of you. I choose now. I choose you.
Her voice almost slipped, but she held Cale's hand tighter. He squeezed back, silent. Then, with a slow breath, he brushed his thumb over the broken ring in her palm. His eyes said what his voice could not. Gratitude, promise, and something like joy.
No more bargains with ghosts. Just us. And what comes next? That's my vow.
Cale leaned in. His forehead touched hers, gentle, steady. For a moment, nothing hurt. Sir Bram cleared his throat.
By stone, blood, and sky, witnessed.
Rook's answering howl bounced off the rafters, startling doves from the bell tower. A laugh broke from Elara, bright and unguarded. The sound felt like sunlight. Cale released her hand. Reaching for his cloak, something slipped free. A velvet pouch hit the floor at her feet, gold drawstring glinting in the light. He gestured gently. "It's for you." Elara bent to pick it up. The pouch was heavier than it looked, Metal shifted inside, a sound like keys or coins or secrets waiting. She glanced up at Kael. He nodded once, eyes fierce and bright. With a small, decisive breath, Elara loosened the drawstring. She reached inside, fingers brushing cold shapes. The world held still. If you want more stories of dark bargains and impossible hope, follow for the next chapter. In her hand, something unfamiliar and sharp pressed against her skin, and she realized it was not alone. The heavy doors of Blackthorn Keep shuddered open. Elara stepped into the chill, boots damp as they pressed the thawing ground. Where once the stones bit with frost, water now trickled between her toes, carrying the scent of moss and earth. Rook bounded ahead, pale fur streaked with mud, his tail a slow metronome. He paused to nose a patch of green, then shook himself, spraying cold droplets over Elara's skirt. She almost scolded him, but caught herself, a smile breaking through instead. Kael came behind her, silent but steady. He offered his hand, scarred knuckles bare. No silver chain linked them now. Only warmth passed between their palms. For a heartbeat, she just held on, breath rippling in the morning air. The cold here felt thin, like the faint ache of old wounds. Above, Sir Bram's cane tapped a steady rhythm along the wall. A crow barked from the keep's tower, a flash of wings against the pale sky. The yard echoed with new sounds, dripping meltwater, Rook's nails skittering on stone, a distant laugh from the kitchens. Spring announced itself quietly, in forgotten ways. Elara looked toward the gate. Months ago, she had crossed this threshold, with snow clinging to her hair and chains at her wrists. Now, free, unbound, Kael's hand in hers, the memory felt like a bruise, tender but healed. A single snowflake floated down, landing on the thin inside of her wrist. It flickered, then vanished, leaving behind only a warm droplet. Elara traced the old scar there with her thumb, breath catching at the change. Kael's gaze followed hers. His sleeve rode up just enough to show the narrow scar across his own wrist, the one he always hid. She said nothing, neither did he. Sir Bram called out, voice brusque as ever.
Try not to track mud into the hole, or you'll have me to answer to.
Elara laughed, surprised by the sound. It echoed against the stones, startling even Rook, who barked in response. Kael smiled with his eyes, then reached to brush a curl from her cheek, cautious, gentle, so unlike the haunted man she'd first met. Together, they stepped beyond the keep's shadow, toward the waiting wood and the uncertain green. She shifted, feeling something crinkle in her pocket. She drew out a folded note, her own handwriting, the edges worn soft. If you are reading this, you chose hope. She stared at the words, memory catching at the edges. Beyond the gate, the ground sloped down toward the forest. There, half buried in mud, glinting in the new sun, was the broken fragment of the old silver chain, forgotten by all but the thaw. Elara closed her hand around the note. She squeezed Kael's fingers, the two of them turning toward the woods, the future, and the places memory could not reach. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and hit the like button. Let us know in the comments which moment from Elara and Kael's journey meant the most to you, or what you think the note truly means. Wishing you hope and stories to carry you forward.